Don't say anus. Don't laugh, and don't say anus. This is a serious matter. Hey nerd! Welcome to another video from Where the Streetlights End. This is going to be a bit of a longer one. I was planning to do a little lore episode where I just talk about a cool monster, but I got excited. So this one is about a cool monster, but I've also got a bunch of neat historical context and a bit of shit talking included. And for those who like that sort of thing, there will be some personal updates at the end. Before I get into the flesh of the video, I've got to take this opportunity to ask y'all to hit the like button below if you want to help me find joy in this wretched life. Subscribe to the channel if you like all things horror, folklore, or spooky, told to you by someone with a master's degree in history and nothing better to do. And comment down below why you think I just saw a seagull 300 miles inland. I've got a Patreon that you're invited to join either for free or with a contribution at patreon.com/backalleyalchemist. Join in more conversation, get regular updates from me, and get access to extra stuff. Now that you've toughed it out through my shameless self-promotion, I'll get on with my bullshit. Cutscene. Okay, so there is a really freaky entity from English folklore who has haunted the imaginations of people for at least hundreds of years. She goes by many names, really. Black Annis, Black Annie, Black Agnes, etc. Don't say anus. Pretty much any lady name that starts with A-N could be referring to this terrifying entity. I always encourage you to use context clues before jumping to conclusions, though. So if you're reading something, think about it a little before assuming it's about this monster, right? Fair enough? We good? Carry on? Alright. Carrion. I looked up how to pronounce the name of this place because I don't want to look like pathetic, uncultured swine, and it is not what I expected. I checked a bunch of different places to make sure I wasn't being lied to. I was taken aback by extra letters again. To the west of the city Leicester, in England, there is an area called the Dane Hills. These hills are widely believed to be cursed, and even land deeds going back to the 1700s warn to be wary of those hills. Within them, there lies a cave called Black Annis's Bower. Black Annis's Bowel. It's not funny, she's really cool. Okay. I'm a child. Within this cave lives our wretched and mysterious monster for the week. A great oak tree stands near the entrance of her cave, providing extra cover from peering eyes. It is said that Black Annis dug this cave for herself using her own clawed hands. Sources state that rather than even regular gnarly claws, she wields horrible iron blades as fingernails. Evidence of these you can see on the entrance and walls of her cave, where the stone has been slashed and chopped at as if by massive knives. She only ventures from her cave in the night, and her only errand is to gather her dinner. She crawls from her cave and lies in wait among the stones or in the branches of her great oak tree. For those who watched my Little Lore episode about Jenny Greenteeth, this whole witch hanging out in the trees to snatch her prey thing might sound familiar. I have an inkling that perhaps some stories of Black Agnes and Jenny Greenteeth got mixed together, or still get mixed together now and then. Probably especially with the internet, right? The tree thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense with Jenny Greenteeth, in my opinion, because she's a swamp witch, right? They're low to the ground type of thing. But with a similar entity from the same region who hangs out in her oak tree, it makes sense that some people might get those two things mixed up a bit. Anyway, Black Annis watches in silence as she hopes her meal will walk right into her trap. Her meal of choice is, of course, like many other bogeyman figures we love to talk about, children. Though I won't refuse her any credit, she has also been known to devour livestock, in particular young sheep. She doesn't sustain herself purely on the flesh of human children, though it is her favorite. It is said that if no one passes near her home, she will sometimes wander the surrounding area hunting for something to eat. She never goes too far from her cave, but when someone is hungry, they'll push their limits in order to survive. So while people tried for a long while to avoid building their homes right around the site of her cave, everyone knew that she might come all the way to the village in order to find what she was looking for. It is said that she will sometimes come upon a home and watch quietly from beyond the window until she finds a plump, juicy child to snatch away. Black Annis will reach her clawed hand through the window and grab the child with such speed that the parents would be none the wiser. Some claim that the houses in this area were designed to have very small windows so that she could not fit her arms inside. I'm not sure if this is true. Anyone who knows that area IRL, let me know if that's a thing. However, if you listen well at night, you may be able to hear her coming and therefore save your child from this terrible fate. She is said to scrape her iron claws along the stone and other hard surfaces as she walks, perhaps to sharpen them. Multitasking. And she chatters her teeth as well. In this way, she reminds me of a cat trying to coax a bird from the windowsill. I did see some sources saying that there is some cultural thing that refers to Black Annis as a cat, but I only saw that in like one spot, so I'm not really sure. I didn't really dig into that. If you know about Black Annis as being a cat, holla at your girl here. If you hear the noises of her chattering her teeth or the scraping of her iron claws, shutter and lock all of your windows and doors immediately. What is perhaps worse than the fact that she eats children is what she does with the bits that she doesn't want to swallow. Now, I'm indigenous, and I believe that it's disrespectful as fuck to just toss out the inedible parts of a living being that you've hunted and eaten. Show some respect. That housed a soul. Make sure the death isn't a waste, right? But not a lot of people think like me, and also, it's kinda different. It's kinda different when it's a human child. Eh? It logically isn't, but it, like, is. Anyway, Black Annis, after eating all of the meat off of her prey, then tans their hides like one would do the skin of a deer. She makes blankets and clothing out of the flesh of those that she devours. Yes, clothes. She has been described in many sources as wearing the skins of her prey around her waist like a skirt. She wears necklaces, bracelets, and earrings made from human bone, and it is said that bones decorate the walls of her cave. This gives her a terrible, frightening appearance. Another noteworthy physical characteristic of Black Annis is her skin tone. She has pale blue skin which seems to glow in the light of the moon as she moves through the hills. At first glance, she seems a whole lot like a typical bogeyman figure, just another creepy-ass witch who eats children. Stories about her serving the societal purpose of keeping children out of dangerous areas and inside at night, right? But she's a lot more interesting than all of that, to me. I first wrote a really basic little article about her many years ago, and I thought to myself, neat, a wicked witch figure, spooky. And that was that. Now, however, my brain is a lot bigger, and I asked myself a bunch of questions. These questions led to a lot more insight into her lore, and I'm pleased to announce that this was gonna be a short little monster video like usual, but it became a lot more exciting for me, and now you get a longer look into this gnarly bitch. The history of the area makes her origin a lot more exciting than what you'll find in short articles about Black Annis. People say she might be the remnant of a Celtic or Germanic goddess. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. She seems to be a case of cross-cultural relationships mingled with religion-based biases. Maybe. Or maybe not. I'll tell you what I know. Tracing back through history to find references and reports of Black Annis has taken me on quite an interesting journey. The land known as this witch's domain of Leicester, England, is now a rather expansive urban area. I've obviously never been there, but looking on Google Maps satellite view, I'm seeing a pretty impressive city. The location was initially settled by Romans in 47 AD, around there. Prior to their arrival, the area was occupied by a group of Celts, known today as the Corieltovians. I don't know how to pronounce that. I should have looked that one up too. I forgot about it. There were Celts there. The indigenous Celts there before the Romans came. That's what I'm saying. In 47 AD. Long time ago. There is ongoing debate regarding an official date or time frame during which Romans departed from England overall, but a Roman cemetery was discovered around modern Leicester, which dates to around 300 AD. It is believed that even after they took their leave, this settlement remained active, with people continuing to live there. The settlement continued to grow. Eventually, the settlement became a part of Danelaw for a short time. For those unfamiliar, Danelaw is the name used to describe areas of England or the UK that were conquered and occupied by Danish Vikings in the late 800s. When the Great Heathen Army took over big chunks of land in the region, starting at around the year 865, legal agreements were drawn up between the kingdoms and the Danes, which is what Danelaw was. Since about the 11th century, people used the term Danelaw as a simple way to refer to the lands which were occupied by those people from the Northland during that period. I know it sounds like I'm just going off about English history, but trust me, this is relevant to understanding our monster today. This place has a pretty tumultuous history, occupied by the Celtic tribes, then taken over by Romans who fortified it and used it for military purposes. Then, when they left, it remained occupied and became part of England officially, under the guardianship of a bishop. Was then taken over by Danish Vikings for a while, and then becomes an official town in a bishopship or whatever again. It lost its status as a city, yet again, in the 1200s. Some say because of conflict between the church and the aristocracy, but I couldn't verify this. And it didn't officially become a city again until 1919. We don't see shit like this over here in the US. And all of this I have shared with you in order to emphasize the way that such a chaotic history, paired with multiple cultures interacting and intermingling throughout, tends to create some of the most interesting beliefs, traditions, and folklore. In some cases, these people from across the centuries mix their stories and belief systems together and create long-lasting tales and terrors. In other cases, folklore and legends are born much later, but are based on that fascinating history. In the case of our beast today, folklorists aren't sure which of these categories we're really looking at. The origins of Black Annis are pretty uncertain, but it's clear that the history of her stomping grounds has a lot to do with who she is and how we believe she behaves. For example, she is known as the Dane Hills Hag. This is another name for her. This being because her home is said to be within the Dane Hills, just to the west of the urban center of modern-day Leicester. This area has been called the Dane Hills because it is where those Danish Vikings had their primary settlement in the late 800s. Without knowing the place was part of Danelaw, that reference to the Danes in the name of her home might have been a little bit confusing. Aren't you glad I told you extra history? Now, looking into the origins of Black Annis herself, it appears that the first confirmed reference to her by name comes from a land title document dating back to the 1700s. The document states Black Annie's Bower Close. This is referring to a cave in the Dane Hills called Black Annis's Bower. Therefore, the land is being described as being near that cave. Simple enough. For the cave to have gone by this name before this document was written, we can presume that belief in Black Annis must go back further. In 1797, the world got its first popular and clearly told story of Black Annis, shared in print rather than through oral tradition. A man named John Hayrick published a poem titled On a Cave Called Black Annie's Bower. In the poem, he describes her in much the same way that we know her today. His poem tells of this monster's cave and warns that those who know of it should avoid it at all cost. Shepherds and farmers have found that their animals have disappeared and the trail goes cold at this cave. He proclaims that infant blood oft stained the gory den, meaning that babies go in and they don't come out. You know, if you know what I mean. He goes on to describe Black Annis herself as having eyes that are fierce and wild, and she has hands with long talons upon them instead of nails. Her talons are foul with human flesh, for she has used them to shred her human prey. And I suppose didn't live through COVID and therefore learn the proper way to wash your mitts. Her face is described as pale and blue, and she wears the tanned skin of her victims around her waist like a skirt. The story in the poem ends with Black Annis being defeated and her body being tossed back into her own cave. I have located some images from a local newspaper called the Leicester Chronicle, dating back to 1874, where the contributor describes the story of Black Annis. Of course, her name changes a bit throughout all of the older references and records. She has been called Black Annie, Black Agnes, or even just Annie, and anything similar. This isn't particularly confusing or surprising because people don't always write English the same way, and the descriptions of her are always the same. The articles that I found, thanks to an article at brombonesbooks.com, by which I mean they dug up the images and then I found their article, describe Black Annis and what she does. Essentially, the articles state that Black Annis scratches people up, drinks their blood, and hangs their skin to dry. And they explain further that she likes to creep around in the branches of trees, or crouch around large rocks, ready to pounce out and snatch up her unsuspecting prey to drag them to her cave. Like I said, these are the earliest known and verifiable references to her that we have available in print. But the folktale of Black Annis long predates these documents. Most sources on Black Annis that you'll find across the internet claim that she has her origins in Celtic spirituality, naming the goddess Danu as her original form. And I'm gonna have to shit on this. From what I can tell, there was never really a goddess named Danu, at least not that anyone can confirm. Folklorists have sort of made her up, based on, I'm not really sure what. The name doesn't show up in any old text at all, and it makes its first appearance in the theoretical work of scholars starting in the 1800s. From what I can tell. My best guess is that scholars were looking at and thinking about Celtic belief systems and recognizing a major emphasis on worship of fertility, agriculture, and motherhood, and they assumed that they needed a name for an entity who embodied those things. There is, however, evidence of a Celtic goddess by the name of Anu, without the D. A goddess named Anu has been mentioned very briefly in Celtic mythology as being the mother of the gods of Ireland. Now, Anu has been sometimes pronounced Anna, and therefore it sounds a whole lot like Anna, Annis, or Agnes, our wicked hag of the Dane Hills. However, I see an absolute zero here as far as resemblance goes outside of the name alone. I'm not sure how a mother of gods who feeds and nourishes could be warped into a terrible cannibal with iron claws that stalks her prey around her gnarly cave. Sorry, I'm just not seeing it. So she's probably not the result of Celts who originally lived here. So what about the Romans? The Romans believed in some goddesses who may very well have similarities to Black Annis, but by the time they were in England, from 47-ish until after 300 AD, they weren't actively practicing their old-school pagan belief systems. However, as we see time and time again, societies which make the plunge into Christianity often hold on to little bits and pieces of their more traditional belief systems, even if it's by accident. A Scottish folklorist named Donald Alexander Mackenzie suggested that she could have come from belief in the Greek goddess Demeter. Once again, Demeter is a goddess of fertility, growth, marriage, and love. While she has some connections to the underworld, I'm not seeing what she has to do with wearing the tanned flesh of cannibalized children. Unless, due to the Christianization of the Romans, the OG Demeter had been sort of twisted and bastardized into being something evil. Turning the old-school pagan deities of a culture into something demonic has been a rather common practice among those who work to spread Christianity among their societies. It is possible that at this time, they believed Demeter to be an evil figure. But I'm still not convinced, right? Do you think any of that rings right to you? I do want to hear dissenting opinions. If you think I'm wrong, tell me. Damn it. Anyway, if not the Celts or the Romans, then what about the Danish people? who occupied those lands for a little while. An English archaeologist named T.C. Lethbridge has asserted that Black Annis may have been thought up as a sort of version of the Germanic/Norse deity Hel. Hel is one of my favorites, honestly. It takes a Christian mind to consider Hel a scary or evil entity, however, not a pagan mind. The way that she is perceived is very different depending on the systems you've already got going on in your head, right? She, in Norse mythology, was sent to watch over and protect Helheim, one of the many different realms in the Norse afterlife. Hel is one of Loki's children, and Odin was scared of those guys, so he sent them all to weird places where they couldn't hurt him, other than Sleipnir. He liked the pony, I suppose. So considering Hel a goddess of death is extremely reductive and shows a lack of knowledge surrounding the Norse afterlife, or the details of Hel's story itself. She certainly has nothing at all to do with eating children. So I don't believe that the Northmen who occupied the area of Leicester made up Black Annis to represent their deity named Hel. However, because everyone found those dirty pagans to the north to be terrifying, and everyone considered their beliefs and everything about them to be evil and tainted, I can see how, perhaps, the Christian English folks who came back to and lived in the area might have imagined the Danes left something evil behind in those hills. This is my personal hypothesis, which I cannot verify and have seen nowhere. This is my thoughts here. I believe that after the Vikings left the area, it took a while for people to feel comfortable living there again. Perhaps it seemed too risky because of how many times it had been occupied by a foreign military force. Or maybe people thought that the pagan Vikings had cursed the land somehow. Maybe they had brought one of their terrible demonic pagan gods with them and left it behind. These normal people, who thought that the pagans were essentially agents of Hel on Earth, would have probably assumed the absolute worst of them and anything supernatural that they might have left behind. This could explain why the city didn't quite touch the Dane Hills, and why they told stories that those hills where the Danes had their primary encampment were haunted, cursed, or occupied by something truly terrifying and evil. Black Annis. I think I solved the mystery. What do you think? I'm back because there's more. Now, there is another common claim regarding the origin of Black Annis. Many people believe that she didn't arise from any belief in any goddess or deity at all, but as a scary story based on a nun named Agnes Scott. I have had a great deal of trouble finding any credible sources telling the story of this nun. Many articles about Black Annis include short blurbs about how she was a reclusive nun who ran a leper colony near the Dane Hills. She is said to have been Dominican, perhaps. An English historian named Ronald Hutton seems to be the most cited proponent of this theory. He claims in his book titled The Triumph of the Moon, a History of Modern Pagan Witchcraft, that the memory of this reclusive nun named Agnes Scott was distorted into a scary story because of religious biases against nuns like herself during the Protestant Reformation. Which is entirely possible. All kinds of that stuff was happening. All of England began to come up with weird, terrible stories about either Catholics or about Protestants, depending on where they fell during that long and brutal religious conflict. If anyone's interested in that kind of history, I've got all that in my head. I got real into the Protestant Reformation during my master's degree. Anyway, I am, personally, however, hitting a solid brick wall trying to find anything at all about a nun named Agnes Scott with records from anywhere near Leicester. Aside from references to her in articles about Black Annis specifically, and almost every article about Black Annis, she doesn't seem to exist. There is an Agnes Scott College in the U.S. state of Georgia, founded in 1889, I don't think that's the same, Agnes. Um, in regard to a leper colony in the Dane Hills, I've also uncovered nothing at all to suggest that one existed. The closest thing I can find to this claim is a place called Burton Lazars. I hope I pronounced that right. Burton Lazars, which is in Leicester County. And this was the site of what was at one point a hospital, which was opened in the 12th century by the Order of St. Lazarus. According to Google Maps, Burton Lazars is quite a ways to the northeast of Leicester, nowhere near the Dane Hills, which is just west of the heart of the city of Leicester itself. The hospital eventually became the Order's headquarters, and it is possible that there was a nun at this hospital by the name of Agnes Scott. But if so, she certainly was not the one in charge of it, and it was by no means a leper colony. The hospital did do a lot of work to help people with leprosy, but as you may have guessed, a leper colony is something very different. I also can't find any record of a nun here by that name. And if anyone with better access to records and documentation regarding this wants to dig around and school me on this matter, I would welcome it. I do like the idea of an old nun who lives in a cave to be weird, but then she dedicates her life to caring for a leper colony. And I like the idea of her story being twisted and changed into something super spooky to tell the children to keep them inside at night. I love it. It's just that I'm not actually seeing any evidence of this. I be shitting on everyone over here today. I always end up shitting on everything when I really dig into these topics. What can you do? I love shitting. So, one thing though, was she even a witch? So, her true origins are obviously pretty complicated, and no one knows for sure how the story of Black Annis came about. I've obviously got my personal opinion. I want to know what yours is. I haven't found any that are convincing online anywhere. But I would like to take this time to point out another interesting fact regarding our subject today. One that probably should have been mentioned earlier, but I got lost in the research hole, like you do. Deep in the anise hole. So I've been referring to Black Annis as a witch quite a lot here, right? And she is now popularly known as a witch. Even the title of hag is synonymous with witch, and that's in her name for tons of people, the Dane Hills Hag. And surely enough, she fits the description of a typical scary witch in a lot of ways. She's a hermit, a woman, or at least female in form. She does weird stuff with bones, kicks it with nature, and eats children. Those things typically a witch doth make. It's witch shit, right? But looking at earlier references to her, such as the poem written by John Hayrick, no one ever really used the word witch for her. And especially in the 1700s, which was the height of the witch craze over there in England, it's surprising that the word is never uttered. Perhaps that's because of the witch craze. In an era where people were going batshit about how witches were among them and they looked just like your sister, and maybe the culture was moving away from the old school imagery of the more cartoonish folklore witch. And then we've moved back to that again in our modern age. That's something that one of my sources briefly mentioned and I hadn't seen brought up anywhere else. I thought that tidbit was definitely worth noting just because it opens us up to more questions about how and why our stories are what they are and how they change depending on the needs of the people. Anyhow, that's it. That's all I've got on Black Annis for you today. That is Black Agnes, Black Annis, Black Anna, the Dane Hills Hag, terror of the town of Leicester. She eats your kids, makes clothes out of their skin, and chatters her gnarly teeth in the light of the moon. People have been telling stories about this freaky gal for untold centuries, and she's even made her way into newspapers and land titles. But how the fuck did we come up with her in the first place? This was a lot of fun for me to research, so I hope it was fun for you to hear me ramble on about. As always, let me know down below what you think of this witch beast. Why do you think we call her a witch now, but the older records of her say nothing of the sort? Which culture that spread around there do you think birthed her story? Is she just the result of fear of the pagans who once occupied those hills? Do you like what my hair is doing today? Subscribe to the channel if you like this video and would like more videos like it. Numbers matter when you're just a little guy like me, and subs mean the world. Likes also matter, so if you'd like to validate me in this ongoing obsession and preoccupation with folklore and scary history, hit the like button. Hit the like button. And if you go to patreon.com/backalleyalchemist, you'll find me there, and you can even join for free so you can talk to me more and get personal updates. My life is pretty interesting on its own, outside of these videos I make, and you're welcome to follow along and learn more about me over there. If you join a money-giving tier, it will help me stay alive in this capitalist hellscape while I'm sort of trapped on a lake taking care of my dogs and can't figure out a real way to make money while doing so. For those who give me money on there, I'll be doing a giveaway in the fall with some of the witchy items that I handmade. For anyone who wants me to, I'll mail out one of my crafts to you worth about the same amount of money you pledged to me since you joined or in the last year. While I'm at it, I'd like to vocally thank all of my ass-saving patrons. Without you, I might not have the motivation to spend so much time on this nonsense, so thank you so much to my boy Maddie, Andre Davos, McBabylegs, makes me giggle every time, Christopher Coulson, Smoothie, Patrick Finnegan, Walter Fate, and Dale. I'd be lost without you. What's that from? I have in my head a sort of cartoon child with a tear on their cheek saying, I'd be lost without you. Maybe to a dog? What is my brain doing? Oh my god, it's Balto. My brain did Balto on me. Thank you, Balto. I'd be lost without you because you brought her the diphtheria medicine. Do you like Balto? Balto's been my favorite since I was, born. And, of course, thank you to my free tier patrons. Emotional support is important, too. Now, if you're the type who cares about what I'm doing with my life but aren't following along on my Patreon or any other personal accounts, here comes updates on my life. Firstly, my dog Corn has been diagnosed with Cushing's disease. It took us a very long time to get that diagnosis. He'd been pissing nonstop since March. We were living in the van, having to hand wash piss blankets every day while still both going to work for a real long time, and waking up every 2 hours through the night to go out and drain him. That, even without the fact that the boy was miserable and felt like he was dehydrated and starving, was truly a nightmare. We moved across to the other side of the state, and luckily his new doctor over here figured out his issue right away. Months of diagnostic exams, piss tests, blood draws, courses of antibiotics that took a lot out of us. Then he got 2 abscessed teeth and had to have those both removed, which cost a whole hell of a lot of money as well. He's now been on his medication for about a week and a half as I'm recording this, and he's doing much, much better. Been sleeping through the night and seems to be in less discomfort physically. He has one more costly exam in a couple of weeks to double check and make sure that we're giving him the right dose of his medicine. He's not even 8 years old, so I was not expecting him to get this sort of issue, at least for another couple years, you know? My seasonal job teaching civics to kids ended at the end of May, and we immediately moved 300 miles east right after that. Currently living in the van and the small trailer at a beautiful spot on the lake. The van is our bedroom and the trailer's our kitchen, shitter, and place to keep things, mostly. The dogs are slowly figuring out how to exist with this living situation. I've been doing a lot of complaining lately with my dog being diagnosed. He's my reason for living, so that's been tough. It is better now that he actually has the diagnosis and has been on the medication, you know. And I've been able to catch up on sleep after 7 months of wandering around in a fog. His medication is pretty expensive though, so I'm still complaining constantly. Trapped at a lake with the dogs is generally a good problem to have, you know, spending all my time at a lake with my dogs. That should be lovely. I'm just a ball of stress. I'm a mess over here. Got a brain thing or 3, you know. That being said, tell your friends about my channel, and remember that I have a Patreon. I've been working on teaching the dogs that other people are allowed to exist nearby, and they need to not yell at people for no reason. Horn is learning that if he wants to yell, he goes inside now and sits down, because I was teaching him when he started barking, I was having him come inside and then I'd give him a treat. So now he like gets angry and he barks and then he goes inside and he expects the treat. So it's not perfect, but I'm in the right direction, I think. Collie thinks she needs to be a guard dog, and that's insane because we share a very small space. And we've got like 10 feet of yard that she's trying to guard, and it's just unreasonable. Like at the very end of her line is where the neighbor spot begins. She doesn't get to yell at people who are in their own spaces. So until she can learn to not be a dick, they don't get as much outside time as they were getting over in the woods over in Western Washington. Taking tips and advice on how to teach her to not be a guard dog. Otherwise, I've just been screaming at the wind and trying to figure out which Indian healthcare provider around here can take me so I can keep working on this whole rebellion my skeleton has had going on for the last decade. And I'm gonna fish on that lake as soon as I figure out how to do anything without the dog strapped directly to my body. I swear, I know there's fish in there. Paying close attention to the news has been upsetting. Working on this channel has been helping a lot, keeping me focused on more lofty and fantastical stuff, rather than the shit show that is the real modern world. And being a history master, I'm too aware of these patterns that continue since prehistory. So anyway, I hope watching these videos helps y'all out in that regard as well. I'm working on a secondary series for the channel. I'm compiling notes and ideas for a second episode at least every other week, where I dig into something mysterious, spooky, or dark that doesn't fit quite in with the little lore content, but won't be as long as these bigger video essay type videos, right? So be on the lookout for that. And if you made it all the way to the end, thanks for giving a shit about me. That's all I can think of to share with you at this time. Remember, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, do that for glory. And go check out my Patreon. If it's not interesting over there, tell me what you'd like me to do with it. That would make it interesting. Later, nerd.